that the method that we are using must be a method that takes into account the value of the intangibles. Because valuation is not done that you value without intangible and then you separately add the value of the intangibles. So this is another crucial thing. Third point which I want to highlight is that this debt that is written and all the assets and liability, when we are doing valuation, the valuation should typically be based on the market values. So valuation should not be considering the book values, it should be considering the realizable values. It can be more, it can be less also. As to the approaches, one approach is fundamental. If we talk of fundamental, there are two methods or two approaches. Asset method is also fundamental to the company. Income method is also fundamental to the company. It will value a company on the basis of its inherent strengths. In income, it can be either historical or it can be a projected. So projected is discounted cash flow. Historical is capitalization of earning. I'm not going into methodologies, I hope you have discussed that. As to the asset, it can be again book value method, realizable value method or liquidation value method. There is another method which is known as a relative method. So suppose we have valued a company on discounted cash flow. The value is 5,000. But what if a similar company is available at 2,000 rupees? The value of the company will not be 5,000. There is a comparison to the valuation of the company considering the market. Now there are three types of market value methods. One method is the comparable companies multiple method. It is applied in case of listed peer companies. So comparable companies has two things. One, what we have to keep into mind is the valuation that a comparable company in market is getting. That is not a control value, that is a minority value. Because suppose I have to buy Reliance Industries shares. I can't buy Reliance Industries entire company. I can get only a 1%, 2%, 5% float. And that price which I am getting, that's a minority value. So by concept, CCM method yields to minority value. There is another method that is linked with the transactions those are taking place in the market. We call it CTM, comparable transactions method. Because there is a transaction taking place in the market, transaction means that there is some private equity, some investment transaction is taking place. So by concept, CTM method results in a control valuation. Because the first method is the market prices which are available, that is generally a minority valuation. And second is CTM method, that is a control valuation. There is another third method. If there is if you have to value a listed company, then the market price available is generally considered as fair, provided that the price or the shares are frequently traded. So there are three approaches, market, income and asset, but practically we also apply some other methods specifically like the contingent claim method. So contingent claim method is basically an option pricing valuation. If you have to value a ESOP, then we value this. If you have to value a patent, then specifically we can use this option pricing method. There is another method, price of recent investment method. Now price of recent investment and comparable transaction multiple are very, very similar. The only difference is that price of recent transaction or price of recent investment is talking that there is some investment that has taken place in the company itself. And CTM says that there is a peer company in which the transaction has taken place. And what businessmen like the most is rule of thumb. So what they say is if there is a hospital and there are suppose 100-bed hospital and they would allocate a 1 crore revenue to each of the room. So 100 crore is the valuation. Now this rule of thumb method is a very, very useful method, but this method should never be applied solely and it should be a test check of all the other methods. So by one slide, I have tried to demonstrate that these are all the methods, whether I do the valuation, any Big Four does the valuation, any international player does the valuation. You cannot go beyond these methods of valuation. These are the whole and soul of valuation. So you have to select, and when you have to select, 2-3 things, Either it is a minority valuation, is it a control valuation, is it a transaction valuation? So what is the purpose that determines the valuation? Two things which are important from a valuation perspective is, one is the cash flow. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to build on that what are the important factors when we have to value. So one thing is cash flow and one thing is assets. Investors always prefer a cash flow valuation method. So that is why discounted cash flow method is the prominent valuation methodology. As far as the assets are concerned, always see that there could either be an operating asset and there can also be a non-operating assets. So there is a business which is having a land and building, and that land and building and plant and machinery is yielding the revenues. So you can, suppose you have used the income method. Now, once you have used the income method, you can't add the value of land and building to the income method. So it can either be an income method, or it can be an asset method, or it can be a market method. But if the revenues that the company is getting, those revenues are, there are certain assets which are not resulting in revenue. So I am having a surplus land. That land is not resulting in any valuation. I am having a surplus cash. So if there is something on the balance sheet on the asset side that is not resulting in any cash flows, then that needs to be separately added to the business valuation to get the total enterprise valuation. But here, the people, you might appreciate, recently when Mr. Narayan Murthy was not there in Infosys, then there was a lot of speculation and lot of things that Infosys is holding a lot of cash pile in the balance sheet. And it was not getting a valuation. So going by the concept that I just discussed, that if there is excess cash, if there is excess asset, surplus asset, it should be added. But that is not how the capital market operates. So the valuation things that we are discussing it more from a unquoted share, more from a closely held company. In case of market, in case of the stock market, they have their own ways of determining. There are certain, it can be rational, it can be irrational. But the concept that I have just shared, that concept is logical from a perspective of valuation of an unquoted share. So what I'm trying to say is that if there is the same set of business, same set of assets, it is a listed company, it's an unlisted company. The market can give a different valuation. If we have to value, we can arrive at a totally different valuation. These are all the areas where valuation depends. So it can be depending on the purpose, it can be regulatory, it can be accounting, it can be dispute, it can be value creation. Different things, I'm not going into detail. Which method to use, which approach to use, again, on whose behalf we are doing it, what is the purpose, and what is the condition. So I was just discussing with a gentleman that 3 months, 4 months back, things were in distress. We are seeing for the last 1 month, there is a momentum going on, there is a positivity going on. So when you value is very important as to what number it will yield to. If we see the judicial approaches, I think in standards, Mr. Rajiv Singh must have discussed that there are no standards in India, not much standards. So there is an ICAI standard and all that, but there are some judicial pronouncements which say that which method you have to use. So what the judicial pronouncements say that income approach is to be generally used other than the case wherein you have some asset heavy industries, wherein asset approach is to be used, and market approach, as per if we see the judiciary, then in the judiciary there is no mention of CCM, there is no mention of CTM, PORI. These are practically used internationally accepted methods, but if you see any judgment of any court in India, then it will either talk of your asset value, or it will talk of your income value, or it will talk of a market value. And in market specifically, it is only talking of for a listed company. So we just discussed that before 1991, it was CCI guidelines. And at that time, even DCF was not known that what is DCF. So DCF actually first came into India in 2010. I'll just discuss. These are some of the rule of thumb, which, so what I've tried to give, that which industry is there, what is the value parameter that we can use. You can just go through it. Moving on to the second purpose that is important, Indian regulatory environment. We have to understand in this Indian regulatory environment that there are different regulators which have prescribed different methodologies, and there is a total chaos in the market, in the company. Even there is a total confusion as to the value or which method to do. So there can be a RBI prescribing a different methodology, income tax prescribing a different methodology. I don't know, but if some people might have read in today's newspaper, there was a news that about 5 lakh crore amount is being debated, is being questioned by the income tax department, and 26,000 notices have been issued only in Maharashtra region, only because of one particular section that says that you cannot issue shares beyond a particular value. So people were bringing in money and people were issuing shares at abnormal valuations. So all that has come to the notice of the department. 26,000 notices have so far been issued, and that is only relating to the Maharashtra region, and in the times to come, lots and lots of debate is going to be there. So I have divided into 3 parts. A is the transaction, B is the methodology, and C is that who the regulator has prescribed the valuation. So is it to be done by a chartered accountant, company secretary, valuer, registered valuer, who has to do it? The first thing is that in case of RBI, in case of inbound valuation, only discounted free cash flow was prescribed. So there is a thing that is written old, I'll just mention, but let's go through that what is the provision of discount, what is the provision of RBI. So we are all discussing from an unlisted company perspective, because for generally all the valuation, if you have a listed company that is frequently traded, then the market price is accepted as a fair price. Presuming there's an unlisted company which is receiving money from outside India, the only method prescribed by RBI is discounted cash flow. It can be small company, big company, any industry, any segment, nothing doing, only DCF has to be applied. Chartered accountant or merchant banker has to do it. Then recently, the change came in terms of the buyback of shares. So when the buyback, so you have received the money, now the investor is going and there is an exit. So at the time of exit, the recent price that came was that if there is a listed company, market price. If it's an unlisted company, highly abnormal valuation method came that you have to cap the exit based on the return on equity. And that also of the last year. So suppose in the year of exit, the return on equity is 10%. And my investor agreement says that the investor will take 30%. So the law says you can't give more than 10%. But that is applicable if you have issued the equity shares. If you have issued convertible, fully convertible instruments, then the law prescribes that you can use any of the internationally acceptable methodologies. So there are 3 different sets. If there is a normal inbound investment, discounted cash flow. If there is at the time of exit, you have to buy back equity shares, return on equity. And if you have to buy back other than equity shares, I mean any compulsorily convertible instrument, then you have to see the pricing as per the internationally acceptable. And let me just tell you that what happens in inbound investment is, if you are receiving money outside India, then that is a minimum valuation. So discounted cash flow is the minimum valuation. But this same method is applied when you are exiting from India. So at that time it becomes the maximum valuation. So it is very important that there are lots of valuation that they are doing. So what they are doing that we have to allot at 14 rupees, so you give us 10 rupees, 11 rupees. But they don't realize that if any conflict takes place, then that same price will also become their cap. So the same discounted cash flow is minimum as well as maximum, depending on whether our country is receiving the money or the funds are flowing from India. But this method has been withdrawn from 1st of April by the Reserve Bank of India. in all the three, four, sorry to I just missed out this outbound investment. So outbound investment is when an Indian company is making it. But if we see the valuation guidelines, then for the FDI guidelines, all the valuation standards, all the valuation things have been withdrawn by the Reserve Bank of India by its monetary policy, 1st April dated. And what they have done, they have withdrawn it, but they have not prescribed any alternative method. So there is a question whether we should apply discounted cash flow, whether we should apply all the methods. Different consultants are taking different view. Very, very important, income tax. There are three very, very important sections in income tax, and let me tell you, the entire industry is not giving heed to these three sections. And this is the last section on the basis of which I just mentioned that department has issued 26,000 notices. It came in today's newspaper, it came in 10 days back. So it is the issue of debate that is going on. What income tax says is that these three sections have actually come at a different date. So this 56(2)(7) came in 2009, then 7A came in 2010, and this 7B came in 2013. What is it saying? It is saying that if you are receiving money, then it should not be below a particular value. So like RBI is saying that if you are receiving money from a non-resident, then discounted cash flow has to be applied. Income tax is saying you have to apply another method, that is book value, net asset value method. So they have provided the calculation. It is a normal book value method with some adjustments to the advance tax and taxes payable. But as per income tax, if you have to receive the money in India, I mean through a resident only, then the valuation is net asset value. Now why and what happened? The first section 56(2)(7), when the section came, that it said that any individual or HUF, if any individual HUF receives, but then it was widened to a firm or closely held company also. So as on date, if you are making allotment of shares, if you are making transfer of shares, in both the cases, minimum net asset value has to be abided. In case of the third section, 56(2)(7)(b), it is talking of a maximum valuation. So now, under the income tax, there is a minimum valuation, below which you cannot allot or transfer. And there is a maximum valuation, but that maximum valuation is applicable only to allotment and not transfer. So there is a confusion. There are multiple permutation combinations that you can work. So I have tried to make a slide. I am just rushing it, that I am just taking it from one by one. In case of allotment of shares, all the three methods are applicable. All the three sections are applicable. In case of transfer of shares, only first two sections are applicable. In case of a non-resident, if you are making allotment to a non-resident, then 56(2)(7) and 7A are applicable. So when you are making issue of shares to a non-resident, then as per income tax, you have to see that you comply with the net asset value. And as per RBI, you have to see that you maintain the discounted cash flow method, provided I presume that even after withdrawal of the guidelines, we still apply the discounted cash flow. Individual HUF is one section. If you are receiving firm and closely held companies, another section. And then there is a valuer who will do the valuation. And then there are certain exemptions that if you are doing a scheme of arrangement through a court approved scheme of arrangement, or if you are receiving shares through inheritance, or if there is a relative involved, in that case, there's an exemption. As far as the allotment is concerned, the 56(2)(7)(b), if you are issuing a genuine allotment of shares, if you are making a genuine allotment of shares to certain venture capitalists, so venture capital company undertaking, if you are issuing shares, then that is exempt. Any questions on this slide? Because this is very, very interesting, and there is very less information about this particular section in the market. I mean, have you understood it? it's a post-less session, so it has to be like this, but so how do they look differently is that the first two sections are saying that there is a minimum valuation. So if you have to issue the shares, then there is a minimum valuation. And the third section is saying that there is a maximum valuation. So suppose my net asset value is 10 rupees and my discounted cash flow is 100 rupees. You cannot allot below 10 and beyond 100. But the first two sections are also applicable in case of non-residents. The third section is only applicable for residents. And the notices that I was discussing, that was only in respect of the third section because it is a recently notified section. Yes, you were saying something.
But again, in DCF method, is there anything prescribed with regard to the cash flows or the discounting rate? If both the things are not there, then all the valuation would be, a challenge.
Sir, because this is a very normal question, and my answer to this is that the valuation report has to be a self-speaking valuation report. In India, if you go back to the history of valuation, then there is no expert on valuation in India. Everybody is learning. So, till 91 it was CCI guidelines. It was in 2010, till 2010 RBI was following the CCI guidelines. The CCI guidelines was totally formula based. So it was saying you take an NAV, you take PE, CV, you take market value, you average it. So you have to value, I have to value, everybody will be bringing at the same, because it was a formula. And formula cannot yield to different valuation. But when discounted cash flow came, then discounted cash flow, there was no guidelines, you're right. So that is the need where people say that we should have some standards. So I'll cover that because it is expected that the concept of registered valuer will come in another 4 to 6 months, I hope. And if you read the rules of the registered valuer, then they prescribe which all methods you can use. And there is also mentioned that you can also bring in they are also expected to bring in a specific standard to that.
But again, if you remember the regulations, before taking the money in from a non-resident, DCF was already prescribed and the CA certificate used to go before the money could come in. And a special permission had to be granted by RBI. So if that has already been done, then how can income tax today say that, the premium is inappropriate? And what if the premium is inappropriate? Is it going to add to our income?
Yes.
Or is it going to...
The person who is receiving the shares, it is the other sources income of that person. So there are two sections which have been added. So one is this 56(2), and there is another section, that is section 68 of the Income Tax Act. So that 68 says that if I am showing that I have received the money, then I have to prove that I have received the money from this person, and income tax officer can check the books of accounts of the other person who has given the money, and after verification only it will be accepted. If it is not verified, then the person who has received the share capital, the income will get added back.
But again, in this case, the money is coming out of India to FIR, all the legal channels. It is showing in FIRC, it has come as FDI.
So that's fine, na? So that will be accepted. As far as the second limb is concerned, that who has given it, it will be accepted. But valuation will still be challenged. So what I'm trying to tell you is that RBI is saying this. So what people are saying, they are taking the same stand that you have said, that we are receiving money from outside India, we are using discounted cash flow method. So we are safe. But that is a wrong call. You have to see what income tax law is saying. And again, if you are receiving money from outside India, you have to see what transfer pricing is saying. So transfer pricing is another limb to this, which says that you have to do the transaction at an arm's length price. And there are multiple cases wherein the transfer pricing officer has rejected discounted cash flow as the arm's length price. And there is another case, I'll just take a minute on that case. What happened, that assessee give a projections of 10, 20, 30, 40, there was a projections. And usually assessment takes place after 3-4 years. So when the assessment took place, then the transfer pricing officer asked for the actual numbers of the assessment. The actual numbers was actually only 25% of the total numbers. So what the transfer pricing officer did was, he said that you have arrived at a value of 1000. If I do a 25% of that, then their value is only 250. So he added back 750 that you have received it from your outside India associated entity, and on 250 he added back 10% interest. He said 25 crores is your income. So when we are preparing projections, it is not that, because people say it's a projection, whether it achieves, it does not achieve, how does it matter? It matters. So I am just saying that because when RBI has till now not challenged any valuation. So there is a valuation which is a 1-page valuation, there is a valuation which is a 200-page valuation. RBI is not challenging any valuation. But income tax is challenging. So as far as the valuation is concerned, income tax will see there are lots of transfer pricing cases going on in valuation. This Shell issue, Vodafone issue is the second Vodafone. First Vodafone was the indirect transfer. Second Vodafone is this valuation issue. So this valuation issue has been questioned by the income tax authority, and they are very, because income tax targets are also not getting met. So they are going to be aggressive in that. So one thing is what a particular regulation is saying, and if the money we are receiving from foreign residents must see the arm's length price. Always deploy all the methods and then see that what is the valuation that is coming. So just keep in mind when you are doing any, and you have not discussed, but I'll just let you know. A lot of debate was going on because see, the word that is used is, if you see the section 56, then what is the language? It says that when any person receives. So a lot of debate was there that receive is a transfer, because this section 56 is, if you go into the background, then this section 56 is actually akin to the gifts provisions. So it was more or less the gift tax. Now the word that is used is any person receives. Now the challenge was that whether this receive is only transfer or even fresh issue of share is also received. So there is a very recent judgment of Sudhir Menon, that's a tribunal judgment that has come, and that judgment has stated that receives is a wider term and it covers issue of shares as well. So as on date, there is a tribunal judgment that says that even if you issue the shares, you have to comply with the income tax valuation guidelines. I don't know how many of you people are doing it, but just see, because this can have a lot of litigation aspects. I'm moving. First, the second one, that in case of transfer pricing, arm's length price has to be given, and arm's length price is not defined, that which is the arm's length price that we have to use. Then in income tax, there is another method, ESOP tax. So if in a company is issuing ESOP, then at the time of exercise of those ESOP options, the tax has to be payable by the employee. And the valuation has to be determined by a category 1 merchant banker, but the valuation methodology is not prescribed. Our view, how we are doing this merchant banking valuation is that because in ESOP, the employees generally get a minority shares. If you see any ESOP scheme, then there will be 0.5%, 1%, 2%, 3%. It will not be more than 5% in any case. So this ESOP valuation can